I never believed in near-death experiences until I died for 8 minutes, and Jesus revealed what's coming in 2025. My name is Dr. Rajesh Chidambaram, nuclear strategist with over 30 years analyzing global catastrophe scenarios. I've always been a man of science, facts, and hard data. I worked on some of the most classified nuclear programs in history, calculating probabilities of global catastrophe, modeling atomic reactions, and understanding the delicate balance that keeps our world from nuclear annihilation. But nothing in my scientific training prepared me for what happened when my heart stopped beating. And what I learned about humanity's destiny changed everything. For decades, I carried the weight of nuclear knowledge on my shoulders. I knew things about our world's fragility that kept me awake at night, the mathematics of destruction, the precise calculations of how quickly civilization could end. I spent my career understanding death on a planetary scale, but I never truly understood death itself until I experienced it firsthand. My colleagues always respected my analytical mind. I was the guy who could look at nuclear scenarios without emotion, who could calculate the unthinkable with cold precision. But behind that scientific facade, I was struggling. The constant exposure to humanity's potential for self-destruction was eating away at my soul. I was having nightmares about mushroom clouds, dreams about cities turned to ash, visions of a world where my calculations became reality. The irony was crushing. I spent my life preventing global catastrophe, yet I was slowly dying from the psychological weight of that knowledge. My wife noticed I was becoming distant, withdrawn. My children barely saw me anymore because I was either buried in classified documents or lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the ways the world could end. I started having chest pains about 6 months before the incident, sharp, stabbing sensations that would come and go without warning. Being a stubborn scientist, I dismissed them as stress-related. After all, when you're carrying state secrets about nuclear capabilities and modeling worst-case scenarios for global warfare, a little chest pain seems insignificant. I was wrong. Have you ever ignored warning signs because you were too focused on bigger problems? Sometimes what we dismiss as minor becomes the catalyst for the most profound transformation of our lives. It was February 15th, 2024. I remember the date because I had just finished a particularly disturbing report about emerging nuclear threats from non-state actors. The data was troubling, the implications terrifying. I was sitting in my home office, surrounded by classified documents, when the first wave hit. It felt like someone had wrapped a steel band around my chest and was tightening it with industrial machinery. The pain was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't just physical. It was as if my entire being was being compressed into a single point of agony. I tried to call out to my wife, but no sound came. My vision started to blur, and I could feel my heart beating irregularly, like a drummer who had lost the rhythm. As a scientist, even in that moment of crisis, part of my mind was analyzing what was happening. Myocardial infarction, massive heart attack, the kind that kills nuclear strategists who spend too many years calculating humanity's potential demise. I managed to press the emergency button on my medical alert device before everything went dark. The ambulance arrived in what felt like seconds, but was probably closer to 8 minutes. By the time the paramedics reached me, I was already gone. No pulse, no breathing, clinically dead. They worked on me furiously, using every tool in their medical arsenal to bring me back. Advanced cardiac life support, defibrillation, CPR, emergency medications. But for 8 long minutes, Dr. Rajesh Chidambaram, nuclear strategist and man of science, was dead. What happened during those 8 minutes changed everything I thought I knew about life, death, and the true nature of existence. At first, there was nothing. Complete darkness, like the void between stars. But it wasn't empty darkness. It was pregnant with possibility. alive with potential. Imagine floating in warm, liquid starlight. That's the closest comparison I can make. The darkness wasn't cold or frightening. It pulsed with an intelligence I could feel but not yet understand. As a scientist, I had always imagined death as simply the cessation of brain activity, the end of consciousness, the final shutdown of biological systems. But this was different. I was still me, still thinking, still aware, but freed from the constraints of my physical body. Then I began to move, though I had no body to move with. It was like being pulled by an invisible current through dimensions I couldn't comprehend. The sensation was both terrifying and exhilarating. For someone who had spent his career understanding the physical laws of the universe, this was utterly beyond anything in my scientific framework. I found myself floating above the emergency room where my body lay motionless on a gurney. I could see the medical team working frantically, could hear the rapid-fire medical terminology, could see the fear in my wife's eyes as she stood in the corner, watching the love of her life slip away. But I felt strangely peaceful, detached from the drama unfolding below. Then something extraordinary happened. The hospital room began to fade, and I found myself in what I can only describe as a tunnel of light. But this wasn't the cliché near-death experience tunnel you see in movies. This was something far more profound, more real than any physical experience I had ever had. The light wasn't just illumination. It was alive, pulsing with intelligence, radiating love so pure and overwhelming that it made every emotion I had ever felt seem like a pale shadow in comparison. Picture the warmest embrace you've ever received, multiply it by infinity, then imagine it as pure light that penetrates every atom of your being. As I moved toward this light, I began to understand that I wasn't alone. There was a presence with me, guiding me, protecting me. In that moment of recognition, everything I had believed about the universe shifted. What would you do if you suddenly realized that love, not fear, not calculation, not strategy, was actually the fundamental force holding reality together? And then I saw him. Jesus Christ stood before me, but not as the figure depicted in religious paintings or church windows. This was Jesus as pure consciousness, radiating divine love and infinite wisdom. His presence was so powerful, so overwhelming, that every cell of my being, if I still had cells, vibrated with recognition. He looked at me with eyes that held the depth of eternity. And when he spoke, his voice resonated through every dimension of my existence. "Rajesh," he said, and hearing my name spoken by the Son of God was like hearing the first word ever spoken in the universe. "You have spent your life understanding how the world might end. Now, I want to show you how it will be transformed." What happened next was the most profound experience any human being could possibly have. Jesus began to show me visions of 2025, but not the kind of future scenarios I was used to analyzing in my nuclear strategy work. These weren't calculations of destruction or models of human conflict. These were glimpses of divine transformation, moments of spiritual awakening that would ripple across the globe in ways that would fundamentally change the trajectory of human civilization. Remember, love is the force that moves the universe. This wasn't just a beautiful phrase. It was the operating principle behind everything I was about to witness. I saw events unfolding that were beyond anything my scientific mind could have predicted. Spiritual awakenings happening on a massive scale. People from every culture, every religion, every walk of life suddenly understanding truths about existence that had been hidden for millennia. It was as if humanity was about to graduate to a higher level of consciousness, and 2025 was going to be the year of that great graduation. But these weren't just beautiful visions of spiritual enlightenment. Jesus showed me specific events, specific moments in time when the fabric of reality itself would shift. I saw technology merging with consciousness in ways that would make our current understanding of artificial intelligence look primitive. I saw natural disasters that weren't punishments from God, but opportunities for humanity to come together in unprecedented ways. Most importantly, I saw how individuals like you, yes, you watching this right now, would play crucial roles in this transformation. Jesus showed me that every person has a unique part to play in what's coming, a specific mission that only they can fulfill. But these visions of individual purpose were only part of what I was meant to understand. As I looked around this realm of infinite light and love, I realized that what I was experiencing was just the beginning of revelations that would challenge everything I thought I knew about God, about humanity's destiny, and about the extraordinary events that are about to unfold in the year ahead. Have you ever wondered what lies beyond the boundaries of scientific measurement? What I discovered next would answer questions I never even knew to ask. As I looked around, trying to make sense of where I was, I realized I was no longer in the hospital room. The beeping machines, the sterile white walls, the worried faces of the medical team, all of that had vanished. Instead, I found myself standing in what can only be described as a place beyond human understanding. The first thing that struck me was the light. But this wasn't like any light I had ever experienced as a doctor or as a human being. This light was alive, pulsing with an energy that seemed to penetrate every fiber of my being. It wasn't harsh or blinding like the surgical lights I was accustomed to. Instead, it was warm, welcoming, and filled with an indescribable love that made me feel completely safe and at peace. As I took a step forward, the ground beneath my feet felt solid yet ethereal, like walking on crystallized starlight. The air, if I can even call it air, carried a fragrance that reminded me of every beautiful flower I had ever smelled, but multiplied by infinity. And the silence. It wasn't empty silence. It was pregnant with meaning, with purpose, with an overwhelming sense of divine presence. Then I saw him. Jesus appeared before me, and I want you to understand something. This wasn't the pale, thin figure from the paintings hanging in churches. This was a being of pure love and power, radiating an energy that made the sun seem like a flickering candle. His eyes held depths of compassion I had never imagined possible, and when he looked at me, I felt like he was seeing not just who I was, but who I had ever been and who I could become. "Welcome, my child," he said, and his voice resonated through every cell of my being. It wasn't just sound, it was truth itself, vibrating at frequencies that touched the very core of my soul. "I have something to show you that will change everything. You think you know about what's coming." Jesus reached out his hand to me, and the moment I took it, everything around me transformed. We were no longer standing in that realm of light. Instead, we were suspended above the earth, looking down at our planet as it spun slowly in space. But this wasn't the earth as I knew it. This was the earth as it would be. "Look," he said, his voice now carrying an urgency that made my spirit tremble. "Look and see what I have planned for 2025. What I witnessed next was beyond comprehension. I saw timelines branching out like rivers of light, each one representing different paths humanity could take. Some paths led to darkness, division, and despair, but others led to something magnificent. In one timeline, I saw a great awakening beginning to sweep across the planet in 2025. It started small, like ripples in a pond, but grew into massive waves of consciousness that touched every continent, every culture, every heart that was ready to receive it. People were remembering their true nature, their connection to the divine, their responsibility to love one another unconditionally. "This is the year," Jesus told me, his hand still holding mine as we watched these visions unfold, "when the veil between heaven and earth becomes thinner than it has ever been. Those who have been preparing, those who have been seeking truth with sincere hearts, they will experience supernatural encounters, divine downloads of wisdom, and spiritual gifts that will seem impossible to those still sleeping. I watched as churches began to transform, no longer focused on rules and restrictions, but becoming centers of genuine healing and love. I saw religious leaders stepping down from their pedestals to serve humbly, and I witnessed ordinary people like you watching this right now, suddenly receiving divine revelations that would change the course of human history. What if I told you that every person watching this has a specific role to play in what's coming? Your preparation isn't just personal, it's cosmic. Yet alongside this magnificent awakening, Jesus revealed another reality I needed to understand. What Jesus showed me next changed everything I thought I knew about the battle for humanity's soul. Look at the opposition, he said, and I saw another timeline playing out simultaneously. Dark forces, both visible and invisible, were working desperately to prevent this awakening. This is why the timing is so crucial, Jesus explained. 2025 is not just another year. It's the pivotal moment when humanity will choose between ascending into their true spiritual nature or descending deeper into illusion and separation. And the choice, my beloved child, belongs to each individual soul. It's the pivotal moment when humanity will choose between ascending into their true spiritual nature or descending deeper into illusion and separation. And the choice, my beloved child, belongs to each individual soul. I felt overwhelming love radiating from him as he continued, "Those who choose love over fear, unity over division, truth over deception, they will experience supernatural protection, divine guidance, and miraculous provision. But those who continue to live in fear, who refuse to forgive, who choose hatred over love, they will find themselves increasingly isolated from the divine flow of abundance and peace." Then he turned to me, his eyes burning with an intensity that seemed to ignite my very soul. "This message is not just for you to receive, it's for you to share. The people watching this, the people you will encounter, they need to understand that 2025 is their opportunity to step fully into their divine destiny. But they must prepare now." "How do they prepare?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper in the presence of such majesty. "Love is the force that moves the universe," he replied, and I felt these words brand themselves onto my heart. They must learn to love unconditionally, themselves, their enemies, their families, even those who have hurt them most deeply. They must practice forgiveness daily, not because others deserve it, but because forgiveness is the key that unlocks divine power. As these words penetrated my consciousness, the profound irony wasn't lost on me. A nuclear strategist who spent decades calculating destruction was being taught that love, not force, not strategy, not weapons, was the ultimate power in existence. Jesus then showed me specific preparations people needed to make. I saw individuals spending time in prayer and meditation, not as religious routine, but as genuine communion with the divine. I witnessed people serving others without expectation of reward, their hearts expanding with each act of selfless love. I observed families healing generational wounds through honest conversation and sincere forgiveness. "Tell them," Jesus said urgently, "that material possessions will not protect them in the coming changes. Only those who have cultivated genuine relationship with me, who have learned to hear my voice above the noise of the world, who have practiced walking in supernatural love, only these will navigate the transformation with peace and joy." I absorbed these revelations. I felt my time in this divine realm coming to an end. The visions began to fade, but Jesus' final words burned into my consciousness with crystal clarity. Remember that consciousness exists beyond the brain. Love transcends all religious boundaries, and the kingdom of heaven is not a distant place. It's a present reality for those who choose to believe. The supernatural encounters beginning in 2025 will prove to the world that everything I taught 2,000 years ago is not mythology. It's the blueprint for humanity's next evolutionary leap. Suddenly, I was back in my physical body, gasping as the medical team worked frantically around me. But I was no longer the same person who had coded on that table. I was transformed, carrying within me the most important message humanity has ever received. Love is the force that moves the universe. This truth had literally been written on my heart during those 8 minutes of clinical death. The monitors showed my heart was beating again, my brain waves were normal, but inside, I knew I had been forever changed by encountering absolute love, absolute truth, absolute reality. I had seen the timeline of 2025, and I understood my mission to prepare as many hearts as possible for the greatest spiritual awakening in human history. Now I spend every day studying not just medical journals, but the teachings of Jesus with new eyes. I see his words not as religious doctrine, but as practical instructions for supernatural living. I've witnessed the power of forgiveness heal impossible relationships in my own family. I've experienced divine guidance in my medical practice that has saved lives in ways that defied medical explanation. The transformation I experienced in those 8 minutes didn't end when I returned to my physical body. Now I live each day with the urgent understanding that most people don't realize about what's coming. The window for preparation is closing faster than anyone imagines. What I experienced in those 8 minutes of clinical death has given you exactly what I promised at the beginning. A nuclear strategist's first-hand account of what Jesus revealed about 2025. You've seen through my eyes the timeline of humanity's greatest spiritual awakening, witnessed the divine preparations required, and understood the choice every soul must make. Love is the force that moves the universe. This wasn't just beautiful poetry I heard. It was the fundamental truth that will determine your experience in the coming transformation. What does this mean for you today? You have a choice to make right now. You can dismiss this as fantasy, or you can recognize that consciousness exists beyond what science currently understands. You can continue living in fear and division, or you can begin practicing the supernatural love that will transform not just your life, but the entire world. What would change in your life if you truly believed that love is the greatest force in the universe? What relationships would heal? What fears would dissolve? If you want true freedom, if you want to be part of the greatest spiritual awakening in history, if you want to experience supernatural peace in the midst of global chaos, then start practicing love and forgiveness today. Begin cultivating genuine relationship with the divine. Learn to hear the voice of truth above the noise of distraction. Because what I witnessed in those 8 minutes wasn't just a glimpse of eternity. It was a preview of the choice every soul will face in 2025. The timeline I saw beginning depends on people like you choosing love over fear, unity over division, truth over deception. Remember, love is the force that moves the universe. This truth has been written on my heart, and now it's your invitation to transformation. Think about how you can live this truth today. What relationships need healing? What grudges need releasing? What acts of service are you being called to perform? Your spiritual preparation is not just personal, it's cosmic. You are part of the Great Awakening, and the world needs you to step into your divine destiny now. What do you think happens when humanity chooses love over fear? Share your thoughts below, because your awakening matters more than you can possibly imagine.